Hi, everybody. This is Janine, and welcome to my Fireside Chat with Michael Kalles.
I love it. Love it. Wow, what a setting up there, Janine.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Spectacular. Just beautiful.
What lake is it?
It's Lake Ontario. It's Prince Edward County in Picton, just past Lake on the Mountain.
I've been there.
Beautiful.
Near
Beautiful.
Near Cove?
Sorry?
Near Prinier's Cove?
Right next to Prinier's Cove, Adolfo's Reach. Yeah.
So nice. Okay, everyone, thanks so much for being here. And as I was saying before, I think what we're finding now with the Zoom calls of all sorts, they're all being recorded. And as such, people are watching them, on their own time. So it's important that we keep it on this time, but recognize that a lot of people will be watching it after. We follow that, and it's active. So let's start. Firstly, Janine, I want to thank you very much for being here today.
Thank
you. Background. Just bear with me for 1 second. Everything okay, buddy?
Yeah, I can, but it's way too bitchy.
Okay, just try to keep it on or go through your phone. You got to just switch through in another 30 minutes. Sorry about that. Anyway, long story short, Janine has been working in the Valley area, Hoggs Hollow, for decades and decades. Grew up there, lived there, knows the area inside out. She's our go-to person whenever someone's inquiring in that area, and she's just an expert. And I was interrupted before by myself, but I wanted to say thank you, Janine, for taking the time to be here with us. Seeing your cottage, I'm surprised you're in the city and not up there. It's so spectacular. But
I'm leaving right after this interview, actually.
Okay, so we'll have to be on time at 2 o'clock. Anyway, so thank you so much for being here. So tell us a little bit about it. How did you begin your career to begin with? And then how did you become known as the area specialist? What went into it and what continues to go into it as you maintain your position as the area expert?
Okay, so we're going back a long ways ago,
Okay.
35 years ago specifically, and I actually had a catering business, which I overlapped with my first 2 years of real estate because it's tough to get going and have an income that's reliable when you're first starting out. And because I grew up in the Valley, it was a natural for me to pick that area as a farm area. And so initially I started door-to-door knocking, which we've recently stopped doing, as we know, probably for everybody in this COVID environment. But that's how I started. And then eventually went to newsletters, and then eventually got a bit of a presence in the area over time. And it has taken decades, I can honestly say. I mean, for anybody starting out with a farm area, if you want to start a farm area, have a long-term perspective on it. Don't just look at the first year, the first 2 years, because you could be 2, 3, 4 years at it and only get a listing or 2 listings from an area. So it's important to take a long-term perspective on these things.
Right. And I guess, 2 things jump out at me, and that is that you're very young when you started, and B, you're entering an area that's extremely high end.
Right. So nobody could afford a house when I got into the business. I was 23. And my parents didn't refer me any business. So they didn't believe in that. They said, you do it on your own kind of thing. So I started off with my catering clients, and had some catering clients in Forest Hill and Rosedale and the cricket club. And so I gradually got my name around that way. But it was a tough go in the beginning. I worked new houses on a subdivision for Chestnut Hill Homes for a year. That's how I actually first started in the business before I went to resale. And then I worked the backups on those. So this was up at Warden and Highway 7 in Unionville before I went into the resale. So that evolved over time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about what goes into it from you on a day-to-day basis, and what are some of the things that you've done consistently all throughout the years from the beginning up to and including now?
So we start with the just listed and just sold. That's really important to get those out. Even though people are throwing them into the garbage all the time, it's still top of mind if people can see those flyers. I do my own newsletter, which, Jeremy, if you can pull that up on the screen, I call it the Valley View. And so I have been using various different newsletters over time. I've switched now to the Kalles newsletter. But this newsletter I started, I have an assistant that comes in every week. And so I give her the content. This particular one was done in April, and it's just talking about COVID-19 best practices. So I wanted to send to the clients in the area a reassurance that if they should list their home or sell their home through me, what steps am I taking in order to protect them, to protect myself, and to protect anybody that's coming in to view their property. So I sent that out in April. And as you can see, it says over. It's not important that you see the second side, but the idea is that up at the top here, you have various pictures of noticeable places in the valley that people would recognize. And then I branded myself by calling myself the Valley Girl. So everybody has a different brand. It's important to have a brand. And, at the time somebody suggested that because of the topography of Hoggs Hollow and that it's in a valley, why don't you just call yourself the Valley Girl? And so that evolved, and that's how I branded myself. So whatever is your brand, you need to have that on all of your advertising going out to the area. And in some instances, when people will first speak to me, they say, "Oh yeah, you're the Valley Girl." And I'm like, "Yeah," with a smile on my face, So that's important. Another thing is that recently, because of technology, zooming ahead, I've gone with a bio video, which I won't bore you with today, but it's basically prior to a client seeing me and inviting me into their home, I want them to get a sense of what I'm about and what I do and what is my philosophy in marketing homes in Hoggs Hollow, because let's face it, they're big ticket home prices. And I want to give them a level of comfort that what I'm going to do for them is everything that I have available, knowing about the area, being the expert in the area, knowing what each house is sold for, top of mind, not just looking it up on MLS, but, being in my brain as to, what the house sold for down the street, what the one up the street is asking, and so forth.
Right. And it's interesting you say that because, there's such a volume of listings on the MLS, of course, less now due to circumstances, but generally, and, Harvey always says, and it's true, you have to be knowledgeable about what's happening. If you're selling photocopiers and someone says to you, well, how many pages a minute does it print? And you don't have the answer, you've already lost them because you're not knowledgeable on the product. If you're at a cocktail party and Janine sees someone says, well, tell me about that place on Plimbridge. It may not be Janine's listing, but you have to know about it. You have to have the knowledge. Now, obviously today we're in different circumstances, but, Caravan, and now, thanks to Jake, we're doing the virtual caravan, and it makes a huge difference because at least you can speak intelligently about the product. It's interesting, Janine, I was just on a call, on a Central Brokers call before I got on this call, and one of the things that we were talking about is print, newspapers, just sold cards, just listed cards. And, when we first got into this, let's use March 15th and then April 15th as two specific dates. March 15th is when things really started showing their face here with COVID-19, and April 15th, we were in the thick of it. One of the things that we discussed as Central Brokers in Toronto is that there's nothing wrong with promoting a for sale. Hey, you've got people who need to sell. This is, of course, before the Premier opened things up in the last couple of weeks. But at that time, don't promote sold. Stay away from promoting your sold. So today on the call, I brought it up. I said, how does everyone feel about people promoting solds? And it was interesting. One of the Central Brokers from a very prominent firm says, I'm okay with it online in terms of social media, but cards just today, this isn't an overall comment, but cards today is something I never thought about. Think about the cards, how many people are handling it when you're producing it, when you're distributing it, when you're accepting it at your home. You get your mail today, you don't just pick it up and lift it up and open it on your kitchen table. It's a whole process of cleaning it and disinfecting it or waiting 3 days before you open it. So it's something interesting. And, Harvey and I, just before this call, were on a call and we were talking about print. So I think things were, technology and digital has really transformed our industry. And I think what COVID-19 has done, it's not allowed us to say, well, you know, when I get to it, you know, maybe I'll make a move into the digital world, et cetera. It's sort of dragged us there, and nobody has a choice anymore. You know, if you had a listing and you didn't have a virtual tour, high level digital photographs, you know, floor plans, et cetera, people would think you've lost your mind in today's world. I mean, when I say today, I mean today. So how do you see yourself when we come out of this handling it? Because I know just sold cards and just listed cards are big. Do you see yourself continuing in that vein? And I'm hoping, God willing, this is after we have a vaccine and we're back to sort of our new normal.
So the short answer is I'm not entirely sure, and I don't think anybody has a pinpoint on that. But what I can tell you is that one of the ways that I've reached people, because when I go into a farm, you'll see no ad mail, no junk mail, you know, on all of their, on a large percentage. And, you know, when I'm ordering 6,000 flyers at a time, which is typical my drop, you know, I've got to figure that the guy who's actually taking those from door to door, when he sees that notice, no ad mail, no junk mail, he's not putting one in that mailbox. And so how many are actually getting thrown out at the end of the day? So what I did was, a number of years ago, actually, I would say over a decade ago, I converted over to addressed with a stamp, you know, specifically to people, which is a heck of a sight more expensive. But, you know, strictly speaking, in Hoggs Hollow, I've only got 450 homes. And so that's one stamp each, and I'm doing that at least once a month. And by doing that, at least I've got some better chance of making it into somebody's hand. Now, I understand what you're talking about, not touching that envelope, and maybe they see, okay, it's from Janine Sheeres, Harvey Kalles Real Estate. Maybe it still goes straight into the garbage, but at least I have a better chance of somebody physically opening that up and taking a look at it versus just a just listed or a just sold, right?
Yeah, it's an excellent point. You know, we used to use many delivery services hand to hand, or in this case, hand to door. And I remember one time I had Ace out for a walk when he was a baby, and I was pushing a stroller. And I saw one of the delivery guys. He didn't see me. He didn't know who I was. And I don't even know whose cards he was having. But he opened up one of the garbages and just dumped his entire bag into the garbage. And I thought to myself, well, great for him. You know, he's getting paid per unit. And who knows, in terms of distribution, are they getting there? And I think with Post, at least you're dealing with Canada Post. At least you know it's getting in the door. So if you are going to spend the money for a card, for a newsletter, it's better to up that cost, you know, even though it is a substantial increase, and at least know that it's effectively getting in the door.
So it's important also to just quickly mention that through Canada Post, we do get a discount through the Toronto Real Estate Board. So if you go onto the Toronto Real Estate Board and you follow the links, we get a prescribed discount on anything that's sent through the Toronto Real Estate Board. And you print your paperwork right from your computer and put that on the box and take that into Canada Post, and that's it, you're done. So it's quite an easy method of getting that done versus, you know, walking into a Canada Post and asking for assistance, which is going to take you an awful lot longer and might not give you a quick result. The other thing, though, is, you know, it's important for us all to take a look at our websites. I'm currently redoing my website right now, which is deactivated, so don't go on to check me, but and get on to LinkedIn and get on to Facebook. So I post to Facebook when I get a new listing every time. You know, my assistant manages my Facebook if there's anything that I want to say about, you know, what's happening with COVID. And incidentally, if you can get yourself into the community, make yourself relevant to the community. And so one thing that I did recently, and maybe Jeremy, you can bring that up, is, you know, I was going to the ice cream store, Baskin Robbins on Yonge Street, walking there 3 weeks ago, and I started to notice all the businesses that are actually open, but not open business as usual. They're more open for skip the dishes, Uber Eats, and all this kind of thing. And so I took about 6 hours and I made a note of every single business that is open. And I thought, now how can I give back to my community and make myself more relevant to the homeowners in Hoggs Hollow? And so this is what I did. And I said, hey guys, let's get together. Let's support our local businesses. These are businesses that are open, either through Skip the Dishes, Uber Eats, or what have you, and let's do our part. So every week I've been using at least one of these, because I used to go out to restaurants pre-COVID. Of course, I didn't for 6 weeks, and now I'm doing it once a week, just ordering out or delivery in or whatever, and picking it up. So I think that's really important. We give back to our community. Another thing which is important to do is in Hoggs Hollow, at least in particular, they have a Valley Fair once a year. And so, Michael, you'll know because you sponsored for many years, I think about 10 years, we sponsored the tent at the Valley Fair. And along with that, on the day was an announcement by the head of the NAG, which is our community organization, saying, thank you to Janine Sheeres and Harvey Kalles Real Estate for this year sponsoring our tent. A lot of years it got rained out, so the tent came in very handy. And next to it, I would have a little A-frame which said, sponsored by Janine Sheeres and Harvey Kalles Real Estate, so that people knew. And again, it's getting your name out there in the community so that you're more relevant to your community. So these are the sort of things that you can do.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm happy you brought that up because that was going to be my next question is how do you give back? How do you make yourself relevant? And those two pieces, both, we hadn't discussed the businesses that are open, but I can't think of anything more important. It's funny because Elise and I were chatting on the phone and she was saying that her and Harvey went for a walk along Bloor Street. And she said she was amazed that outside of Chanel, there's a lineup. And she said, it's incredible. During these times, I can't imagine that people are shopping. I said, thank God people are, and I mean that, that purchase at Chanel just paid for one of the people who works there, their salary for a day or two, and it's keeping businesses alive.
Yeah.
So to give back to our local communities is crucial. It's especially now, more so than ever before. And people, specifically people in the restaurant and entertainment industries, are just being punished by this situation. Yeah. So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I promised that I was going to open the floor. So Jeremy, you've got a better look at people's views. So I'm going to let you step in. I know there's questions that people want to ask, and Jeremy, you probably have a few yourself. Go ahead.
I've got one that I'll start with. I don't see any questions yet, but certainly everyone on the floor is encouraged to chime in. You can unmute yourselves anytime. For an agent who is getting started now and is thinking about choosing an area that they specifically to farm, what are some of the things that you think they should be looking for? Maybe you can draw on your own experience with Hoggs Hollow. What specifically about Hoggs Hollow made it advantageous to be farming at the time that you locked in on it?
Yeah, so if anybody caught Rich Robbins' Zoom presentation last week, there was an excellent amount of content in that Zoom presentation. But one of the things that he said is that you can pick a farm which is about 500 to 1,000 homes, not more than that. Start out small, start out something that you can manage, and start out with an area that does not have a predominant agent that has more than 20% of the business. Because I can tell you, I was doing some canvassing recently for 4 years in an area which did not give results, and that is because there were 2 agents that had more than 25% of the business existing, and that makes it very difficult to get established. So you want to pick an area that has that ability. Secondly, that has some variety. So for example, I'm canvassing in Hoggs Hollow, but those are high-end homes and those are not moving well right now. And so what I did quite a number of years ago is I also decided to pick up the condos all along Yonge Street and the townhouses all along York Mills, so that now I've got 1,000 homes of varying prices, so that, in the good times when the high end is moving well, that's great. In the bad times when the lower price stuff is moving better, I've got that covered as well. So you want to have a variety of different homes in your pocket that you can rely on. You're also looking for an area that has about a 5% turnover or better per year. So take a look at all of the homes that you have in your area and calculate how many sales you've got in that area. You should have at least a 5% turnover in order to make it a worthwhile area to farm in the first place.
Got it. Yeah, it's interesting. Harvey will know that it's always been my dream to move to Hoggs Hollow. It's my favorite area. I tell Janine that all the time. I always go to her open houses in better times. And if you haven't taken the time to drive through Hoggs Hollow, it's incredible. All of our kids went to Hillcrest, which is in Plymouth. It's one of the few, I don't know if there's another area where you can literally look up, if you're at Plymouth, right where Hillcrest, look up and you're seeing almost like mountains. And it's such beautiful privacy. It might not achieve the highest walk scores in terms of the proximity of retail, very close to it. But you literally would sell your cottage if you had a home there, because it's just so pristine and so beautiful. It's worth doing. It's interesting because one of the agents, I'll talk a little bit more about this on Monday, but one of the agents had a great idea. They said, how do you do something that's safe during COVID-19? And his recommendation was drive through areas. You don't have to get out of your car. Drive through areas, educate yourself on areas that, even if it's not for even if you don't see yourself farming that area, just understand the areas. If it's the Bloor West area, or if it's, you know, parts of Etobicoke, or if it's Hoggs Hollow, or if it's Forest Hill or Rosedale or Lawrence Park, drive. You know, there's no traffic on the street, that's for sure. And it'll be a way of educating yourself as to what's happening around the city of Toronto. So, Jeremy, you've got I've got a number of questions, but I'm going to let you sort of control the floor. Does anyone else have anything?
I don't see anything on the board. So if you've got something.
Oh, okay, excellent. So I guess for me, you know, it's funny because when you said 35 years, I'm almost thinking it should be on that newsletter, the Valley Girl in business
It
for
is
35
actually.
years.
I put that on.
Because it's so amazing that you've had that type of experience. From your own personal standpoint, did you find it daunting at the beginning, starting in an area, even though you grew up there, but that you're 23 years old and you're going to be?
I was scared. I was scared. I figured anybody that has more than $1 million, oh my God, I'm a kid. And they're so powerful and influential, and I'm going to say the wrong thing, and I'm going to do the wrong thing. And you know what? We're never 100% perfect. We're always making mistakes. That's how we learn in this business. Anybody that tells you anything else is not being truthful about that. But yeah, I was very frightened in the beginning, and I couldn't talk in front of people. I would stutter. So this is a heck of a sight of an improvement.
That's for sure.
When I first started the business. But you know, getting back to that canvassing a farm area, you know, you want to have a 12-month plan. And this is something that I'm just going to briefly mention one other agent in the office who's really good at this. And this is Larry Meneguzzi. I don't know if she's on the call right now, but
she is.
Okay, so she's very good at, you know, making sure that there's a plan and there's a consistent plan, because getting back to my previous point where we get busy and then we forget, you know, if you can have things that are backup things that, you know, okay, this is a filler this month. So, you know, typically at the beginning of the year, I'm going to put a year in review. And so I'm going to talk about the sales that occurred in the area. I wouldn't necessarily put the addresses or anything like that because we don't have the permission to do that. But I would say, okay, this was the average price. This is how it compared with the previous year. This is how many sales there were, you know, days on market and this sort of thing. And just as a sideline, what I actually have is for each year, I take a look at the sales, how long they took to sell, days on market, list to sell ratio. And so what I can show people when I come into the Valley is that I consistently have a shorter period of time that I'm taking to sell the homes, and consistently sell at a higher list to sell percentage. And so I take a look at my two biggest competitors and I say, okay, Rural LePage has this many days on market, Remax has this many days on the market, Harvey Kalles has this days on the market, and I highlight and bold it so that, again, I can show it to the client and say, hey, I know my prices and this is proof, and I can get your home sold quicker. Again, this is proof. And so I take those stats with me. So I don't have them for every single year because, of course, we have ups and down years, and we don't have necessarily that statistic that we can give to clients every year, but it's enough to be able to, again, give the client a level of comfort that they know that they're hiring somebody that knows what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. You know, I've often thought that the sale price as a percent of its list price is the most important statistic. You know, I was on the phone with an agent yesterday and the seller was just hammering them on listing commission. And I kept thinking to myself, and I expressed it to the agent, why are we focusing so much on a quarter point of commission? Let's focus on what our sale price is as a percentage of its ask price. If it's proven that we can sell that listing at 2.2% higher than our competition, why are we fighting for, you know, 25 basis points when we can do better by 220 basis points? You know, one thing, Janine, I'm sorry to change gears here for a moment, but something jumped into my mind. You know, it reminded me when you're talking about Larry and how the two of you have worked together and Larry's, you know, planning ability. one thing I've always admired about you is your ability to really focus on cost control. It's not just, hey, throw it to the wind and let's see how things work. You're focusing on consistency, making sure that the sold cards, the listed cards, the communications, the newsletters, the participation, everything's consistent, as you said, on a once-a-month basis. But yet, it's not just, let's not look at our expense. It's actually, let's look at our expense and let's look at what our return is on the dollars that you're spending. How did you do that?
Yeah, so this is a difficult thing to answer for agents because we tend to, make a deal and then go out and spend money. And we all do that. And in tough times when we're not making deals, we're not spending money. And so what you want to try and have is some consistency. Rich Robbins, again, I'm going to refer to his Zoom presentation last week because he said if you're a single agent advertising in a farm area, you should be spending about 20 to 25% of your gross earned commissions on your farm area per year. And the other thing that he said is that you want to have a year's worth of income, on the side so that you're not caught short. You have that money to spend, it's in your budget, pay yourself first, was one of the other important things that he said, and budget for these amounts because you never know when we're going to hit a great year, you never know when we're going to hit a poor year, and you need to be able to continue to advertise through those highs and lows. The other thing that he said is that if you're in a team, that is, you've got, 2, 3, 4 agents, whatever, the Robert Greenbergs of the world, you're going to be spending closer to 30 to 40% of your gross earned commissions on your advertising in general, not necessarily your farm, but your advertising in general. So that's sort of a touch point to keep in the back of our minds when we're budgeting for our advertising for the year. And I must admit that of recent years, I don't advertise much in the summer months because my feeling is that agents are away, the clients are away, we're kind of goofing off and we don't really have our eye on the ball for a couple of months. So I've virtually stopped advertising in July and August of every year. So I'm advertising 10 months of the year, but not 12 months of the year. And I'm more heavily advertising in the spring market, more heavily advertising in the fall market, less advertising in the December, and the June, for example.
Right. And, it's interesting because, we haven't touched a lot on social media and I see our time is coming tight. But one of the things that I was thinking about is, as we talk about print, as we talk about cards, as we talk about newspaper, as we talk about all of these traditional forms of advertising, I think, the younger people on the call, I'm looking around for, some of the younger people on the call, it's amazing how social media and online advertising has effectively taken off. I'll use myself as an example because frankly, I don't consider myself a social media person. I'm not on Instagram and following Facebook and this, that, and the other. I've got, birthday wishes on my Facebook that I haven't responded to from last year. But I would say the one thing that I was mentioning today on my broker's call is, I haven't touched a newspaper, physically touched a newspaper, and I can't tell you how long, certainly since the beginning of March, for obvious reasons with COVID-19. But I think that, as we get more used to it, you're looking at things like Apple News. I don't know if people have Apple News. This just happens to be what I have because I have an iPhone. It gets to know you through AI. So I'm watching and following real estate. That just happens to be what I like. It's feeding me more real estate, more and more. And now that also works with advertising. So it's feeding me advertising related to real estate. One of the things Jeremy, who I see on the call, is working on, and Jeremy, maybe you could pop in with a name, and Jake, I've tasked both of you guys to be working on that. And that's where, if let's say Michael Kalles was a purchaser and I'm looking at real estate, what will end up happening is that as I go to Amazon.com to, buy a hockey stick for our son, it's going to tell me about, look at this opportunity with Janine Sheeres with Harvey Kalles Real Estate.
It's just retargeting.
Retargeting. Thank you for that. And that's something that we're working on now corporately. So, we're sort of pivoting the company into really being on top of every element of social. And, it's interesting because one of the brokers on the call was saying, I still like the feel of a newspaper on a Saturday. And as Janine said, I know that when those cards arrive in people's home, it might get to the circular file, but it'll hit their consciousness even for a moment. And that's what they call, of course, institutional advertising. So tell us a little bit about how you're balancing that between the social and the sort of traditional.
So I'm moving more into the social. I actually started an Instagram account last week, but to be quite frank and honest, it's JanineInTheCounty.ca. So don't go onto it yet because I've only just opened it. I haven't started a website. But, so I'm doing it more to feature properties in Prince Edward County, that kind of thing. But that's my passion project. But I'm using Facebook for the real estate. I'm using LinkedIn for the real estate. I'm not at all interested in doing those posts, so I have my assistant do those posts for me. I know quite a number of agents in the office hire a third party to do those posts for you. I think Adam Weiner very succinctly put it 2 weeks ago when he was on Zoom call on the Fireside Chat, that his wife does all of his Instagram postings. And I asked Adam, what kind of reaction are you getting from this? And he is getting good reaction from it. Of course, it's difficult sometimes to pinpoint and say that exact client came from that exact Instagram post. But I think the principle here is that you throw it all up against the wall, all of what you've got available to you, your LinkedIn, your Facebook, your Instagram, your whatever you've got. And that way it just gives you a better broad spectrum exposure to people.
Yeah, it's interesting, just as a funny thought, anecdote, TikTok, which if you've got kids at any age, I'm sure they'll say, oh, look at this TikTok, it's the newest thing. In Hong Kong, they're selling new home developments with TikTok. Our son showed me a TikTok last night on the way home, and it was talking about the situation that's happening in Indianapolis. So it's not just, a cute dance now. It's becoming something that's becoming commercial, and it's becoming political. And it's very interesting to see the transition of that app. Jeremy, I see your hand up there too.
Hi, sorry, I wanted to be respectful of time, but I did have one more question and a thought. The first thing I just want to say in terms of a thought, Janine has been in the industry for 35 years, as she said, and she's mentioned in this meeting at least twice, training sessions on Robins. Maybe you want to speak about towards the importance of, ongoing training, despite the fact that you're so advanced in your career, you're always learning something new. I think that was really interesting. Yeah. And for someone who's also just starting out, did you and picking an area, one of the things that stands out to me about Hoggs Hollow, sure, it's prestigious, but what's great about it is there are only so many homes. And so if you're really farming an area, you find that someone who maybe has more time but a limited marketing budget, there's some advantages to working an area like that where it's a small pocket. You can keep your marketing costs more under control.
Right, absolutely. So you want to take a look again, see how many sales has been in the past 2 years in that area, see that you don't have a prevalent agent in that area, see that you've got the turnover of that area, and see that you like that area, because, it could be houses that you just find you're really depressing or whatever. You want to be passionate about an area. So whether it's a convenient area because it's close by to where you're located, I know, Rhonda, you do over on Avenue Road where you live, which is fantastic. I mean, that's most convenient when you're canvassing in an area that you live in, because then you're seeing firsthand how the reaction is to all of your marketing. You, Rhonda, maybe see people in the elevator and say, hi, Joe, how about that? Are you going to put your place up for sale in the next few weeks? That kind of thing. So it's important to do that. And again, to have a handle on the number. So start off small and grow it as you can afford it. But don't start off with a big area because it's something that you can't control. Expenses can run away from you, and that you can't keep a track of all the sales either in that area. So it's important to start small for that reason.
And Janine, if I can say, it's interesting because Perry and I have also been in the business 30 some odd years, and we also did every area that we lived in, we farmed it. So when we lived in Ridgegate, we farmed it, and when we lived at St. Gabriel's, we farmed it, and it was great. And it's interesting because when we're just rediscussing if we're going to make have less farm areas and be tighter, because what's happened when we lived in them, obviously we had that presence and it was great, and it does make a difference. So as a reality now for Ridgegate, we still keep in touch with the clients that are in Ridgegate, but we're going to reconsider not farming that area with just, you know, mass farming, because it's too big and we're not hitting directly the people we need. So, and also, like you say, I mean, maybe, you know, you might want to do less work or more work or whatever. So what we're looking at is whether we're in a position that we want to scale tighter and maybe not as broad, and maybe more with our existing or past clients, because that's really the business that we've done now, because we're, you know, considerably older than you. So we're now working with, really trying to just maybe work with our past clients, which, you know, thank God have stayed strong with us.
Yeah, we all need a follow-up system as well.
Yeah,
And again, I'm going to
absolutely.
touch on talking about Loree because she's got a fantastic follow-up system. So it's important to be able to get in touch with these people that you've made the connections with. But how are you going to communicate with them? What are you going to do? And Susan, some weeks ago when COVID started, you said, get in touch with your clients, call them, see how they're doing, you know. And I can tell you that that's been fantastic for me. I wrote in my book, in my day timer, I still keep a day timer, you know, contact 3 people every day. And I do that religiously. And, you know, whether I can't reach them and I send them an email or I leave them a voice message or whatever it is, it's just been good to connect with these people. And as a reminder that I'm still in the business, right? Because people can forget and they say, oh, what was the name of that agent we dealt with? Oh, I can't remember. Okay, we'll go with this one this time, right? So it's frequently that we lose the business, not just because, you know, we're not doing the right things, it's just because we haven't been in touch with our clients in so long. So that's really an important part of this is all stuff that we know. Anybody like us that's been in the business for a long time, but it's so easy to forget the basics. And so that's why I think, you know, coming back to something like the Rich Robbins is so beneficial, because it reminds us of stuff that we already know, but we don't do, or we forget to do, or we get busy, or whatever excuse we have, we just forget to come back to the basics.
I think, you know, that's a great way to close the session, because I think, Janine, you said something that's so important. You know, you've been in the business 35 years. There's nothing that you don't know, but I think so much has to be, I think a lot has to be said about engagement and execution. There is so much going on around us, the Zoom calls, the opportunities, the marketing, the training, the one-on-one training with Susan, the training with, you know, Buffini and Richard Robbins, and all of these things that you're participating in is fantastic. And I find myself, you know, I've been at it for 29 years, and I still have this thirst for knowledge, to better myself, to learn more, to understand more, to pick up more statistics, to understand where the market is, why the market is, how is it reacting, how is it getting better, what are things that we can do to improve ourselves, how do we not rest on our laurels and improve. But it takes committing yourself, you know, committing yourself to education, and committing yourself to learning, and committing yourself to bettering yourself at all times. And I think it's a good way to transition off the call and to say, you know, Janine, you're a consummate professional, and you always have been. You know, I remember interviewing you. It's funny, you know, everyone has a memory for different things. I remember interviewing just outside my office. It was actually a weekend that you called me, and what was the name of your previous company? Was it NRS? I'm trying to remember.
Right.
What it was. NRS.
Yeah.
How many years ago is that?
Good memory. Well,
Yeah.
I've been with Kalles, I think 22, 23 years now.
So 23 years, and you know, I still remember. And you're not just a professional, but you're a great person, and you take the business so seriously. And it's, you know, I've heard Susan say this so many times, it's so true. You have to treat the business like a business. You know, it's very easy. It's like to just think, oh my God, you know, real estate's incredible. You know, you don't have to show up at 9, and, you know, you can leave earlier than 5. You can go away when you want. But if you know, there's a great expression, if you do what's hard, life is easy. If you do what's easy, life is hard. And you've really proven that you do what's hard, and you've made yourself a tremendous success. So thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Jeremy and Susan, thanks for helping out, and look forward to next week, and have a safe trip up north. Sorry we delayed it a few minutes.
Great weekend, everybody. Thanks.
Great weekend. Thanks so much, Janine.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.